Something terrifying has finally stepped out of the shadows, and the battlefield of Elbaf is the first place to feel its full weight. Without warning, Imu descends and completely overturns the balance of power, overwhelming even the strongest fighters like Zoro and Sanji with effortless dominance. This isn't just another clash between powerful individuals. It's the arrival of a force that operates on an entirely different level, where speed, strength, and presence all exceed anything seen before. As chaos spreads and bodies begin to fall, the truth behind this overwhelming power slowly starts to surface. From mysterious black flames that can restore life to an aura that even legendary figures fear, every detail points towards something far beyond human understanding. And as Loki steps forward to confront both his past and the one responsible for it, Elbaf transforms into the stage of a far greater conflict, one that signals the true beginning of the endgame. Alright, before we dive any deeper and keep this anime storytelling journey alive together, make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments so the hype doesn't die down. Now then, let's get right into the discussion. Let's roll. Something shifted in Elbaf, and it wasn't just another clash of strength. A presence emerged that instantly rewrote the rules of the battlefield. Imu finally stepped into the open, and with barely any effort, the pressure of that power weighed down on everyone. Even fighters on the level of Roronoa Zoro and Sanji were rendered almost helpless, as if they were standing in a completely different league. This wasn't about who was stronger anymore. It was about a gap so vast it felt impossible to bridge. Amid the chaos, unsettling truths began to surface one by one: unreadable speed, unavoidable attacks, and an aura so overwhelming it sent chills even through seasoned warriors. Imu's arrival wasn't just a threat, it was a clear signal that the endgame had begun. And as Loki finally rose to confront the buried truth of his past, Elbaf transformed into the stage for a conflict far greater than any ordinary battle. From here, the full breakdown of the latest One Piece chapter 1180 unfolds. This chapter wastes no time. It hits the ground running with pure intensity. Imu takes direct action, and the result is downright brutal. Roronoa Zoro and Sanji are overwhelmed without mercy as the situation escalates toward a massive confrontation involving Loki, one that feels like the peak of the Elbaf War. Imu's true power? It's beyond reason at this point, something that genuinely gives off an unsettling, almost terrifying vibe. Chapter 1180 feels like a major turning point, especially with the final antagonist finally stepping onto the battlefield. The chapter title, Omen, sets a dark tone right from the start. Even the small cover featuring Zeus and Tony Chopper feels lighthearted, but it barely softens the intensity of what follows. As the main story begins, Imu is shown standing as if observing the entire world. The editor even directly refers to Imu as the king of the world, reinforcing that absolute authority. Upon arriving in Elbaf, the first question Imu asks is simple, yet loaded: who rules this land? What truly stands out isn't just the aura, it's the speed. In an instant, Imu vanishes from atop a structure and reappears in the middle of everyone, without a single person catching the movement. This isn't teleportation, it's raw, absurd speed. Black flames continue to envelop the body, as if they are part of Imu's very existence. Strange patterns, dot-like markings, are visible across the body, even on the legs, suggesting they're not clothing but part of a transformation, or perhaps a mysterious marking tied to that power. Even the eyes have changed. What was once a single sharp ring now appears as two, giving the impression that the power has reached a higher state. Then there are the three skulls carried along, each marked with stitches across the forehead, evoking an eerie resemblance to something unnatural. Their size alone is telling. Far too large to belong to ordinary humans, more in line with massive figures like Bartholomew Kuma or Whitebeard. This further hints that Imu's physical form sits somewhere in between, larger than a human, yet not quite at the scale of Elbaf's giants. When Imu repeats the question about the king, Dori and Bragi immediately push back, declaring that Elbaf has no king, all while realizing that Summers has already been captured. But the most shocking moment arrives shortly after. Imu'S attacks are so fast that no one can even comprehend them. One character doesn't even realize their fingers have been severed until it's far too late. That's what makes it terrifying, not just the speed, but the complete inability to react. Zoro can't move in time, Hadrudin is too late, and everyone else seems frozen in place before Imu'S overwhelming presence. This isn't just power, it's total domination. Even as Summers is healed, Zoro tries to figure out whether Imu is part of the Holy Knights, but Imu offers no answer, only a cold, silent gaze filled with pressure. The situation spirals further when Hadrudin launches an attack from above, identifying Imu as the main threat. But before the strike can even land, Stanson attempts to intervene, only to lose his leg in an instant. Everything happens too fast, too brutally, making one thing clear: Imu'S presence in Elbaf isn't just dangerous, it's catastrophic. What makes it even more insane is that this chaos isn't driven purely by devil fruit abilities. Imu is clearly fighting with a physical weapon, a sword that moves in perfect sync with the speed of the wielder's hand. This isn't some illusion or abstract power, it's raw, overwhelming capability. The weapon's motion is visibly active, while the rest of the body remains relatively still. That alone proves it. This isn't a trick. This is pure, absurd strength. Even without relying on a devil fruit, Imu is already overpowered. And if a hybrid form provides an additional boost, it only reinforces that the core of this power likely comes from an extraordinary level of haki. Panic spreads instantly. Cries of "stay away from him" echo across the battlefield, showing just how terrifying Imu'S presence truly is. Then Roronoa Zoro finally steps forward, unleashing his King of Hell, Santoryu technique, Purgatory Onigiri. A move that's usually devastating, but here, Imu stops it with nothing more than a tail. Even worse, there's no real focus on Zoro at all. The gaze feels dismissive, as if the attack doesn't even qualify as a threat. It's not just overpowering, it's outright disrespectful to Zoro's current level. Moments later, Imu begins gathering an energy referred to as omen. Some interpretations call it demonic aura or dark force, but the essence is the same: an overwhelming, sinister energy. There's even a subtle detail in the hand movement, forming a symbol that might connect to spiritual concepts found in traditions like Hinduism or Buddhism, though its true meaning remains unclear. Without hesitation, the energy is released directly toward Zoro, and in an instant, it strikes his face, dropping him with no chance to resist. The next page only intensifies the brutality. Tony Chopper can do nothing but watch in shock. Meanwhile, Hadrudin charges in with a massive swing that looks incredibly powerful. But once again, Imu remains unfazed. Instead, a black energy sphere is formed, reminiscent of something like Gecko Moria's abilities, and detonated toward Hadrudin. The explosion is massive, and Hadrudin is immediately taken out of the fight. On the other side, Zoro is already down on the ground. It's still unclear whether he's completely unconscious or just severely injured, but one thing is certain: he's not moving at all. That alone makes this moment incredibly alarming, because if even Zoro couldn't last any longer, it says a lot about the level they're dealing with. Then comes the most mind-blowing part: Imu summons black flames and channels them into Summer's body. Instead of causing damage, the flames act more like a revival, almost as if they're restoring him and granting a power boost. This phenomenon immediately brings back memories of the mysterious murals that have appeared before, including those tied to Enel and the ones in Elbaf. In those depictions, figures are shown with glowing halos above their heads, something that now looks strikingly similar to what appears on Summers. Naturally, this sparks a flood of wild theories. Could Imu have some connection to the moon? Or perhaps something closer to a fallen angel? It might even point to a unique race capable of reviving or controlling others. Another possibility is even darker. Those with halos might not be divine at all, but rather individuals under Imu's control, followers or puppets bound to that power. There's also a chance that the halo itself is a completely different phenomenon that has been misunderstood all along. Whatever the truth is, one thing is clear: this isn't just a visual effect. It's a major clue about the origin of Imu's abilities. Right after that, Imu quickly issues orders to Summers, emphasizing that there's no time to waste. That small detail is actually huge. It suggests there's a limit to how long Imu can remain in this battlefield. He can't stay in the lower world for too long. Whether it's due to a curse, a restriction tied to his power, or some condition that binds him to Pangaea Castle, his presence outside clearly has a time limit. The moment Imu departs at incredible speed, the atmosphere shifts almost instantly. The chaos that dominated the area begins to settle. Tony Chopper immediately takes action, urging Zoro to be moved inside a building for safety, while instructing everyone to gather the injured and unconscious children. Meanwhile, Dory can only stand there in shock, still trying to process what just happened, destruction so sudden it barely had time to register. The tension spikes again on the next page. An emergency warning is broadcast across all of Elbaf. A being far more dangerous than the God Knights has appeared on the island. Everyone is ordered into full alert. Amid the chaos, Imu is seen flying away, and this is where a critical detail appears. Suddenly, he has black wings. They weren't visible before, which makes it clear this is part of his transformation. Interestingly, the shape of those wings closely resembles the wings of the Lunarians, like the ones seen on King. But that doesn't necessarily confirm that Imu is a Lunarian. It could simply be Eiichiro Oda's stylistic approach when drawing black wings. Still, the resemblance is too strong to ignore. There's a real possibility that Imu's transformation is connected to the power of ancient gods, which in One Piece lore are often associated with the Lunarian race. Meanwhile, panic spreads everywhere. Everyone realizes the threat is far from over. Weapons are raised again, but their bodies are already exhausted. And then Imu attacks once more. This time, from the tip of his staff, he fires a massive sphere of black energy, reminiscent of Gecko Moria's abilities, toward the frozen area. The explosion is enormous, so overwhelming that even Elbaf, a land known for its vast scale, feels small in comparison. However, one big question remains. Can that attack actually melt Ragnar's ice? If it can't, then that ice might be ridiculously overpowered. But if it can, it also proves that Ragnar's power has limits. In the world of One Piece, Devil Fruit abilities can be countered by sufficiently strong haki. Logically speaking, someone like Imu should be able to break through it, even without relying on any special technique. Shifting over to Scopper Gabon's group, their reaction says everything about how insane this situation is. Gabon himself is shocked, admitting that he has never felt haki like this before, not even during the God Valley incident. That's a heavy statement, because it implies Imu's level surpasses even legends like Chueldi, Roger, Whitebeard, and Rox D. Zebek. If someone like Gabon says that, then this is clearly no ordinary power. Elsewhere, chaos erupts at the war school. The building is on fire, and Monkey D. Luffy, along with Loki and Ragnar, is seen eating at an absurd pace, trying to recover their strength. Interestingly, Loki seems to have a similar trait to Luffy, recovering quickly through food. Nami rushes in, clearly panicked, trying to figure out what's happening. But more than anything, what she feels is the overwhelming presence of a terrifying haki. Things escalate even further when Killingham begins to break free and is also affected by the omen, instantly restoring his condition. He even appears grateful as he rises again. But that moment is cut short when Sanji, without hesitation, launches an attack, attempting to stop the process. With a swift kick, he charges straight toward Imu. But the result doesn't change. Imu chooses to block the attack directly rather than dodge or regenerate. That's an interesting detail. It could mean Imu doesn't possess regenerative abilities like the ones he grants to others. Or perhaps it's simply pride. He refuses to be touched at all, even if he could recover. He stops Sanji's kick with his own leg, then immediately counters, sending Sanji flying away. Sanji's expression here feels different than usual. There's a clear sense of fear, not the ordinary kind, but the pressure of facing a power far beyond reach. It makes sense, especially after Zoro was completely blitzed earlier without any chance to react. And now, Sanji experiences something similar. Even though he manages to see the attack coming, he's still not fast enough to keep up. At this point, the conclusion becomes unavoidable: Imu isn't just strong. He exists on a level that even top-tier fighters have never encountered before. And the most terrifying part, this still feels like only the beginning. If you look closely, Sanji wasn't completely helpless. He actually managed to raise his leg at the last second to block Imu's strike. But the real issue isn't his reflexes, it's Imu's overwhelming speed, far too extreme to fully evade. The reaction is there, but his body simply can't keep up. And honestly, the fact that Sanji could respond at all is already impressive. Ironically, at this point, being able to react even slightly to Imu has become a remarkable achievement in itself. Then Imu delivers a counterkick with an aura that feels genuinely overwhelming. His leg is wrapped in black flames, while flashes of Haoshiku Haki crackle violently around him. Combined with his larger frame and that cold, emotionless expression, the entire moment carries a crushing sense of weight. The instant the kick connects with Sanji, a massive explosion erupts across the battlefield. After that, Sanji's condition is left uncertain. Whether he was simply launched away or completely taken out remains unclear. Everyone nearby immediately reacts in panic, trying to understand the nature of those mysterious black flames. In the middle of that chaos, Loki finally steps forward. With a serious tone, he demands answers from Imu, asking why he has come to Elbaf in the first place. Loki then reveals a painful part of his past. 14 years ago, Harold was killed in that very place. That man was not only his father, but also the king of Elbaf. And now, Loki has come to uncover the one responsible for everything. That confrontation feels incredibly cinematic. Loki stands above, facing Imu from a higher position, creating a powerful sense of tension between them. Imu responds calmly, almost mockingly, suggesting that this entire tragedy might have been avoided if Loki had never been there. But Loki answers without hesitation, declaring that Elbaf is his homeland, and that Imu is the one who has no right to stand there. From that moment, the tension reaches another level, making it feel like the next major battle is only moments away. Chapter 1180 also ends with no break next week, which is great news. And looking at the chapter as a whole, it makes one thing crystal clear: Imu truly is the final villain of this story. Not just because of overwhelming strength, but because of a presence that feels deeply threatening every time he appears. At first, there were concerns that Imu might not feel impactful enough. Earlier appearances made him seem less intimidating, especially when the body he controlled could still be challenged by Monkey D, Luffy, and Loki. But this chapter completely erases that doubt. From severing fingers in an instant, blitzing everyone on the battlefield, dropping Roronoa Zoro and Sanji with single attacks, to displaying regeneration and large-scale destruction, everything about him feels completely dominant. What makes it even more convincing is Skopper reaction. Hearing him say that Imu's haki is the strongest he has ever felt, even compared to the era of Jul, Roger, Whitebeard, and Shiki, adds serious weight to the moment. That statement alone pushes Imu beyond the category of simply powerful. It places him above legends. Even more interesting, there are hints that Imu may not even be operating at full strength right now. There appears to be some kind of limitation when he descends into the lower world, which means his true power could be far more terrifying than what has already been shown. And if this restrained version is already this overwhelming, it raises a frightening question: what would Imu look like without any limits at all? In short, this chapter does an excellent job of establishing Imu as a final threat worthy of the story's climax. His aura, his power, and the way he dominates everything around him all feel perfectly suited for the final antagonist. And from this point on, it's becoming obvious: the battles ahead are going to be far more brutal and far less predictable. Yash, this is getting even more exciting, Nakama. Big thanks to everyone who stayed all the way to the end. If anything's on your mind or you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. Appreciate you for watching, and catch you in the next videos.